Rafe, how are you? Nice to see you.
Very well. Glorious day, as you say. Hard not to be in anything other than a good mood, but we'll see how the next hour
Well,
takes
let's see how it goes, yeah, because there's quite a lot. Of course, we've got Friday to look forward to in the Trump-Putin summit, which is going to take place in Alaska. I said to somebody, presumably because they can both walk there, which is one of the easier places to meet up with. But a lot of migrant stories around today. Front page of The Sun, which I haven't mentioned yet, has got dingy migrants get dingy days out, which is one of the more curious headlines of the day. Migrants arriving on small boats are being offered cut-price dingy days out funded by taxpayers. You know, as if they haven't been on a dingy before.
Dingy leisure classes and windsurfing. If there were two things I would suspect migrants don't want to do, having scaled the choppy waters of the Channel, it's getting back into that nightmare situation.
Yes, you would think not, but of course in pages 4 and 5 they've got the sort of the full menu, if you like, of all the freebies from different councils. Rotherham Council, dinghy boat hire, gyms, swimming, tennis, squash, athletics, hot drinks. These are all things that they get a discount card for. Calderdale Council, they can get massage, physiotherapy, yoga classes, crazy golf, IMAX tickets. I mean, what is going on in this country? Who comes up with this rubbish?
It's absolutely outrageous, particularly because these discounts are larger than our own armed forces get, than our own pensioners get.
Yeah.
And if you really wanted to create more division in society, this is precisely how you do it. People are already feeling that migrants are getting a good deal. And here, even in my own borough council, they're getting half price on civil partnerships.
Yeah.
I don't know how many migrants are actually gay coming over here on these things, but also they're giving them swimming lessons. I'm terribly sorry. I'm pretty sure the British public don't want migrants now hanging out in swimming pools.
Right. Also, shouldn't they give them swimming lessons before they get on the dinghies to cross the Channel? Maybe they should
set that before the horse.
Yeah, set that up in Calais and have the swimming lessons in Calais. Let the French bloody pay for it.
And they're giving them martial arts classes. Now, call me old-fashioned. I don't really want young men of fighting age being taught hand-to-hand combat in the streets here, let alone being given e-scooters, you know. And, of course, we've had
everything half price.
A huge increase in the number of mobile phone thefts and everything else on e-scooters. And we're sort of equipping them with all that they need to get ahead in life.
I know, it is extraordinary. Another story they've got on that particular spread. The first migrant to be convicted of illegally working for Deliveroo since the Sun's probe has been fined. You'll be pleased to know. The bad news is he's only been fined £26. Abdullah Merez, 23, admitted working when disqualified by immigration status. He was caught in Woking on May the 7th, but apparently he said he was in debt and he's a first-time offender, so he just has to pay the victim surcharge at the minimum, 26 quid.
The whole thing is a farce.
2 hours pay if you work for Deliveroo.
You know, we keep saying that we need to make Britain less attractive than France. If you're getting free scooters and martial arts classes, swimming, you just get a slap on the wrist when you're caught actually flouting the law and working when you're not supposed to be working. Where is the disincentive to come over here?
Well, yeah, exactly right. And of course, you know, at the back end of last week, we were told, were we not, by Starmer and Yvette Cooper, that this is now the beginning of the crackdown on illegal migration, that they're going to start arresting people. And they told us, in fact, I think it was a Friday, that they'd arrested the first people, and they did this very elaborate video which looked very menacing of how they'd like rounded up what looked like about 15 people and put them in a room together and were sort of fingerprinting them or whatever. Let's check in with Yvette Cooper and let's see what she had to say on Friday.
Well, we will provide regular updates for the public at every stage. That's why I'm confirming today that the pilot has now started and the first migrants who arrived on the small boat are now in detention. The transfers to immigration removal centres are underway as we speak, so we won't provide operational details at this point that criminal gangs can simply use and exploit.
Yeah. So we're going to get regular updates, right? That was Friday. I don't think we've had one since, have we? Anybody?
Well, we have irregular migration. Maybe it's irregular updates.
It's irregular updates.
We're going to be having now.
It is exactly right.
But she's hiding behind the coattails of the police there, saying, well, we can't give you any details.
Is rubbish.
It's absolute nonsense. And because they're too embarrassed by the numbers they're dealing about. You know, only 50 people going back on the one-in, one-out system on migrant returns, a handful of people done here. They're not getting serious. This is all performative to try to get headlines and try and pull the wool over the British public eyes and make them think that things are being done.
Well, sounding tough. I mean, Keir Starmer kept putting out all these, you know, I meant it, I said I would crack down on this, I meant it, I'm going to go after them, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You know, he's doing absolute square root of sweet FA. There's nothing changing. 435 migrants arrived on Saturday alone, right? So we haven't even got a figure from yesterday. I was down at the coast yesterday with the dog, you know, keeping an eye out.
Doing your bit for King of Country.
There was a lot of people paddle boarding around. I'm pretty sure they'd started in Britain, and so they weren't actually coming from France. France. But, you know, it was like a mill pond, the channel. I mean, because on those kind of days, it's so calm. So there'll probably be about another 400 odd. So we're getting dangerously close to 50,000 now since Keir Starmer's been in office as Prime Minister, which is a large number of people. It's a good-sized town in Britain, and that's just the ones we know about.
Yeah, to put it into context, that's the number of people we used to get annually net in the 1990s legally.
Yes.
So that's the total number of legal migrants in the 90s. We're now getting that illegally. It just goes to show you there is no deterrent. It's all tough talk. This idea of smashing the gangs was never going to work from the outset. We warned that in advance. We weren't listened to. Rwanda wasn't ideal, but at least it was working to a degree. It was a deterrent of some sort. There are drastic actions to be taken. I don't know whether we're going to be speaking about it later, but the island of Crete has been able to reduce boats to zero.
Well, I mean, I mentioned this a few weeks ago when they announced that they were putting a halt to all asylum-seeking claims for the rest of the foreseeable future, and they've managed to build a detention centre, and they report in the Sun today, don't they, that they've stopped all boats arriving.
And this is done by left-wingers. It's not even done by right-wingers, as in Denmark as well. And they're quite simple. They've simply suspended the asylum process. We are not going to give you asylum status. We're going to arrest you and put you in prison. Why? Because you are illegal. You are an illegal criminal.
And you will never be able to... Then they will be escorted back to North Africa from whence they came by a military sort of, carousel of boats or whatever. So there's going to be no chance that they get to stay in Europe. And that's what the whole of Europe has to do. And including Britain, by the way.
Yeah, and 4 weeks ago they had 200 boats coming over. In the last 2 weeks they've had 0 boats coming over because of this process. They're not using terms like irregular migrants. They're saying you are illegal, you are criminals, you need to go. This is what the reforms also, Farage has also supported, as well as using offshore processing centres like Australia did with the island of Nauru. The solutions are there for picking. This is not rocket science, it's common sense. The problem is our governments, Tory and Labour alike, have been too lily-livered to do what needs to be done.
Yes, they absolutely have. And just double-checking on Yvette Cooper's Twitter account, Home Secretary and Labour MP for Pontefract, Castleford and Nottingley, we will be giving regular updates, she said, as we just heard her saying. Her last tweet was 3 days ago, on Friday, funnily enough, which was when we had the last update. I don't think that's a regular update for me, I'm sorry to say. But so many different stories around about the migrants from one section of the papers to another. Telegraph has got this story that ministers have lost track of more than 150,000 migrants who came to the UK on social care visas. The government has admitted it has no idea how many workers hired to plug gaps in Britain's crisis-hit social care system are still in the sector, and is not even known if they're still in Britain.
This is absolutely appalling, and it's this has been going on for years. Actually, we don't simply know what happens to people when they're here on visas. It's remarkable in this digital age that this is allowed to happen. We also don't know whether they're still in the country. Have they left the country? Because we're not doing checks on people when they leave.
Well, this is what I've always said. You know, when we look at the net migration figures and we try to estimate how many more people are living here than there were, the measurements are so inaccurate that it's almost impossible to get a true figure, isn't it?
Yeah, and you just think at this stage, after so many years of understanding the scale of the problem we're facing, you would think they would try to close these loopholes. It can't be that difficult to actually record visa data, give them their own, we talk about having national ID cards. There should be ID cards for all of these people linked to something. I think leaving the country, they have to use them to get out of the country. I just find this thing absolutely indefensible, and it's not just a stain on Labour, because this also happened under the Tories as well.
Yeah, and we also know, because we've seen it happening before our very eyes, that so many people come to this country on worker visas like this, and then overstay the visa, or get married, or disappear into the undergrowth of the black economy. We also know it happens with people coming here on student visas. So many of those people are now in migrant hotels because they've basically overstayed their visa and are claiming asylum.
This is the big thing. So we always focus on the small boats. Actually, more numbers come for people overstaying their visa and then magically claiming asylum. It's a complete Ponzi scheme. It's a complete farce. It's absolutely corrupt. Let's also say many of them here are under false pretenses. They come here on social care visas for bogus social care places that don't actually exist. Or they apply to ridiculous schools which don't actually provide them with any decent education, and they know full well they're simply just paying to get into the country with no intention of studying in this country.
Yeah, and another story from the weekend that we can bring to you, which was in the Sun over the weekend. 13 freezing UK-bound migrants found trapped in a fridge lorry after the driver heard them screaming for help near Calais. This is a load of Eritreans Eritreans who apparently clambered into the back of a truck, not realising that it was obviously a refrigerated truck, and they got stuck in there. And luckily, they were rescued before they all died of hypothermia. But they were found near a rest area on the A26 motorway, 45 miles from Calais. But it shows you, does it not, that this hasn't stopped. That the practice of jumping onto the back of a lorry and becoming and getting to Britain that way is still happening. It may be to a lesser extent than the boats, but it's still going on.
It's still going on. I mean, one of the reasons the boat numbers increased was because we were getting very good, actually, at stopping the numbers of people coming over on lorries. But there's another thing here. Eritrea tops the list. It's in the top 10 list of most offences of sexual crimes, violent crimes.
Yeah.
Eritrea is right at the top of that list. They're also at the top of the list of people coming over here at the same time.
Yes.
We have to get to the point where we say, look, we know the worst 20 countries for offenders. We don't want anyone from those countries coming over.
Just block them.
Donald Trump Jr. said once, if I gave you a bowl of M&Ms and told you that a few of them are poisonous, would you take a handful of them?
Right.
I'm sorry, we've got to get to the point now where we say we're not taking asylum applications from any of these countries.
Yeah. I remember telling a story some months ago, and I always repeat it, of a sort of street fight that went on in Sheffield. This was probably several months ago, and it was two gangs of Eritreans, basically, one lot who were sort of pro the government and one lot who were anti the government, fighting on the streets of Britain. And you're thinking, sorry, there's something wrong with this picture. What is going on? Let them fight in the streets of Eritrea, surely.
Look, I said enough is enough. I said so many times, we need to get Europe and the UN needs to get together, abolish the 1951 Convention on Refugees. That was created for the post-war world in terms of dealing with Jews and Slav Poles, where to put them in. No one expected these huge transcontinental migration patterns to happen. We should have a new convention. If you're fleeing places like Eritrea or Sudan, you go elsewhere in Africa. You're fleeing Vietnam, you go elsewhere in Asia. You're fleeing Ukraine, you come to Europe. We should only have refugees rehoused within their continent of origin because their culture really matters. They're going to be more at home, more assimilated if they have a similar culture and religion to those around them. And also you want to have them physically close to where they came from, because the idea is they're not here permanently. The idea is for them to go home when things are safe.
Yeah.
The closer they are, the more likely they'll go back home.
Exactly right. And the Mail have got a graph in the paper today on their page 6 in which it says that the figures of these boat arrivals have soared since Labour came to power last July. And in fact, in June and July of this year, it's the two highest months for travel on illegal small boats, somewhere almost reaching 6,000 per month. Obviously, August is uncalculated at the moment. This year so far has been the worst in history for illegal immigrants across the Channel. Labour has lost control of our borders. Every illegal immigrant needs to be removed immediately. But this government is too weak to do that. That's from Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary. Nigel Farage posted a video which showed migrants chanting Allahu Akbar as they apparently crossed the English Channel. He's calling it a national security emergency, which it is.
It is. Well, it has been a national security emergency for years. This is the problem, As I said, enough is enough. Only Europeans should be given asylum within Europe. We have to draw a line.
No question at all. And also, of course, an awful lot of coverage of the various rallies that happened over the course of the weekend. They were happening outside the Britannia in Canary Wharf, outside Epping, once again, the Bell Hotel, which still seems to be housing migrants, despite the fact the pleas from the locals to remove them. And also, there was another case of a migrant being, I think, arrested, not charged thus far, with an offence in a migrant hotel in London, in the Barbican, I think it is. Let me find it here for you. Migrant in a taxpayer-funded London hotel accused of strangling a 20-year-old woman. Every single week now, there's at least 1 to 5 of these, asylum seeker offences being committed. People are sick to the back teeth of it.
And it should be no surprise, we've got the data out. My think tank, New Culture Forum, we put out a whole documentary with Alex Phillips hosting it about immigration and the rise in rape. Afghans 22 times more likely to commit this. But also, people are coming over, have much higher levels of mental illness. You're not surprised given what they've been through in their homeland as well. The trauma that they've been through. And, we don't talk enough about the fact that many of the atrocities we've had committed in this country, the Manchester Arena bombing, Southport, etc., were the children of asylum seekers. It's not just the asylum seekers. People tend to think, once their kids are born here, they're all Welsh choir boys, everything's hunky-dory. No, I'm sorry. The stuff carries on down the generations.
It does. Let's remind ourselves again of this transit van video. This is one they put out on Friday, again, supposedly to make it look as if they should all be trembling with fear because of the incredibly brilliant Keir Starmer government rounding people up. Check this out. I mean, it's not very clear what they're trying to tell you there. They've got a little minivan, which we've got 3 people get out of it, carrying their belongings in a blue plastic bag and go into another room. Doesn't exactly look like Alcatraz, does it?
No, and quite frankly, when you've left the conditions that they've been living in Africa, where essentially they're living in much worse conditions than that.
Even in northern France.
Or even in northern France, in the old, Calais Sandgate, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's actually not bad. That's sort of like a nice taxi service in London.
Exactly.
That's how I came to the studio this morning.
I know, without the blue plastic bag. You can take one of those away. Morning, Mike. We want the UK to be a holiday destination for those who pay and contribute to the economy, not for a bunch of migrants. It's like an all-inclusive hotel for life, says Mark in Croydon. And one here from a disgruntled UK-born citizen. If we are providing cinema tickets, the question is why? They claim they can't speak or understand English. So are we providing them with the translated version of the film as well? It's a joke. Every day just keeps on giving. When I thought I had heard the best of it, it just keeps on giving. Let's get a voice note from Clifford.
Morning, Mike. Great show. Clifford from Devon. So you're telling me that all of these people are getting all this free stuff, yet I am struggling to find stuff for my kids to do in the holidays. Disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because any parent knows you try and get anything to do for your kids, which ends up that you have to pay for. It's an absolute bleeding fortune. You have to spend an absolute king's ransom just to take them to some kind of theme park, take them on some kind of ride. The prices have all gone up, and these characters are not only jumping in the queue in front of you, they're getting it for half price. Brilliant. 22 minutes past 6. Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo is here with us. One from Carol here, who says, Mike, do you think when we reach the 50,000th migrant, maybe we could give them some kind of certificate or some kind of prize, just like when we would do it for the millionth customer of a big supermarket? Maybe make a big fuss of them. I wouldn't put it past this government. Thanks, Carol. She's out cleaning since the early hours for a living. Yeah, well, this is the thing. Many people are out working very early doors, 6:25 this morning. There'll be loads of you out there. Yes, the summer holidays are on. Yes, some people have to look after their children, but most people who are worth anything in this country are out actually working or preparing to get to work, and they get sick to death of reading about all of this free stuff that people are getting. But let's just take a little detour away, because it's Monday morning. Some of you may or may not be aware that Nicola Sturgeon, the former First Minister of Scotland, has got a new book out in which she talks about all manner of things, including getting arrested, including her sort of controversial personal life with her husband, of course, who's still under investigation, has been charged in all sorts of different ways in Scotland. We can't talk too much about him. And about rumours surrounding her sexuality. Here she is talking about being arrested.
You described Sunday, June the 11th, worst day of your life. You're arrested. You have to attend a police station. You're there for hours. To go from First Minister, this lauded female politician, to walking into a police station for questioning. How was that?
Horrific. I think part of me just closed down.
Yeah, horrific. I guess it was horrific. Here she is on her husband's arrest.
What was it like when you saw Peter being led away?
I don't really have a clear memory of that, because I think I'd gone upstairs to kind of get myself ready, and so I don't really...
But the idea of him being taken out of your family home
so
by the police...
don't know, and I genuinely don't know whether the fact that I don't have a clear image of that in my head is because I didn't witness it, or that I have kind of somehow blocked it out. It wasn't until I got to my mum and dad's that I saw the pictures of my house looking like a murder scene, effectively.
Looked like a murder scene. It did. You remember when they had that sort of, that tent outside?
There's been a murder.
And there's been a murder, and all these kind of forensic suited people wandering in and out. And at one point, people thought they were digging in the garden.
I know, it was terrible.
It was all very weird. And now here she is talking about her sexuality, which still seems to be, a subject of some consternation.
You write in the book, I have never considered sexuality, mine own included, to be binary. What do you mean by that?
I mean, what it says, it's just my view of the world and life and the way people are. If you're about to ask me, am I making some big revelation? No. Am I putting labels on myself? No. That's how I see the world.
Might we see you in a relationship with a woman?
I'm just out of a marriage, so I'm not rushing into a relationship with anyone anytime soon. I'm enjoying being my own person for a while.
But not ruling it out?
I'm not contemplating, sort of anything of that nature. I'm just enjoying life.
Spending a lot of time with Val McDermott. Who knows? I mean, I don't suppose who cares really.
Yeah,
It doesn't
who cares?
really matter.
It's in a way, it's a shame if that she still doesn't feel comfortable enough revealing or talking about it.
Yeah.
We don't know the details of it. Maybe that's why they had a caravan at the front garage in the place. There were 3 in this marriage, as Diana said. Who knows what it is?
Very possibly so.
It's up to them to talk about it whenever they feel happy.
But I mean, the overarching kind of view that I'm getting from people in Scotland is that she was at one point this kind of all-powerful, very, very sort of well-respected woman leader at the time when Jacinda Ardern was talked about as being this amazing woman in New Zealand, and they've all kind of blown it, haven't they? They've all just completely screwed it up.
But it also came with this arrogance, with this sense of moral superiority, this judging, condescending tone for people that they didn't think lived up to their moral, righteous levels.
Oh, yeah. Well, do you remember during COVID, when she heard sort of every day she would wake up and go, what can I do now to screw up Boris Johnson and make sure I get something out announced before he does?
And the foul smell they were smelling whenever they had to mention the word Nigel Farage or Reform or the Tories or Jacob Rees-Mogg or whatever. And of course you have to remember, for a long time Scotland was not only a one-party SNP state, but the Scottish media were hand in glove with them.
Yes.
The national newspaper, all of this stuff. And they just regarded themselves as essentially as, that their number 2s didn't smell at all. And so there was certainly, I think, a lot of it was a great deal of schadenfreude around this in terms of the public reaction to it.
Absolutely.
Pride comes before a fall, as they say.
Yeah, and it was a hell of a fall, wasn't it, in the end? And it was all the way to the bottom, which is where she still is. And I mean, don't forget, these are the same people who thought it was a really good idea to saw the bottom off the doors of classrooms in order to create a ventilation so that they wouldn't all die from a disease that wasn't going to kill them anyway.
And just remember, of course, we now know that was the worst thing ever we could have done, was to put, the children and young people of, who were of working age who wouldn't get affected in any real way by COVID, and destroy the economy. And nobody was more gung-ho than the Scots when it came to all of that, when we should have just been protecting the elderly and those with
Well, do you remember at one point they were talking about sort of erecting some kind of border so that, a proper border so that people could not travel from England into Scotland? That's how mad it got.
Secession by the back door. COVID to get independence.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's talk about the front page of the Daily Mail. 26,000 prisoners freed early by Labour. Labour has freed over 26,000 criminals early, including hundreds of serious offenders who were handed sentences of more than a decade behind bars. This has all gone a bit without anybody knowing about it, isn't it?
This is an outrageous story, 26,000. But this includes, it's one thing if you're letting out people with the most minor offences to free up space for hardened criminals.
Yeah.
But there are hundreds of people who've been released who have been sentenced to 10, 14 years in prison.
Yeah.
Nobody is sentenced to 7, 10 or 14 years in prison unless they are the worst sort of serial offenders.
Right.
We're told it doesn't include murderers, but we do know it includes domestic abusers.
Yes.
We do know that some people committing sexual offences have been included in these numbers. Now imagine if you are the ex-wife of or the ex-partner of one of these people, or somebody who has been sexually assaulted in some capacity.
Yeah.
How would you be feeling knowing that these people are back on the streets? Also, the police, how demoralising it is for the police to go through all of the efforts to get these people arrested, go through all the process, only for them to walk out having served a pittance of their sentence with a smirk on their face. I think it's extremely worrying, extremely damaging. We know what needs to be done, of course, which they are trying to do, is get rid of the foreign nationals.
Yeah.
If you did that, you could free up space without having to release these dangerous people. But here's another idea. How about all those old age pensioners, all those carers who've been arrested and imprisoned for retweeting a limerick? Why don't you release those people back on the streets, perhaps?
That might actually be more sensible. But this is the problem, isn't it? Because a lot of the plans to release people from prison who are foreign nationals is also to not send people to prison who are foreign nationals now. So what the idea is that if you are a foreign criminal and you commit a crime, you go to trial, you get found guilty, you don't even go to prison, you just get deported. Now, that might sound good on the face of it, but for a lot of people that will mean you can't guarantee that they actually get punished. They might get sent back to their home nation, and before long they might be coming back on a small boat and they'll be back in here.
Yeah, well, I mean, as long as they're out of the country, I think many people would say better that we're not having to fund or pay them. But the question is, why would a country like India, for example, or others, why would they want to take hardened criminals back into the country.
Right.
People need to understand, just because you have a Somali passport or whatever, doesn't mean you're given the guaranteed right of entry back into that country.
No.
Those countries need to decide, if you are a risk to this nation, we can say, no, we don't want you to come back into this country. Also, a lot of this is grandstanding by the Labour government. Yes, it sounds wonderful, we're going to deport all these foreign criminals. Actually, you haven't reversed the Human Rights Act.
No.
You've still tied our government and our law system into the European Court of Human Rights, and you created the Human Rights Act under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Thank you very much. So there's every reason that these people will just make an application for asylum as soon as you try to deport them.
Right.
And if they're here for more than 3 months, then countries won't be taking them back. We know.
Right. Well, this is another takes us back to this, ridiculous called one in, one out scheme, which, as I've said before, you might as well call it the Jackanory scheme. Just give it any name you like, because it certainly isn't one in, one out. But the French can also refuse to take back anyone that we've decided to reject. So of these people that they supposedly have detained since Friday, and we still don't know really where they're being detained or for how long or when, what's going to happen to them. If, for example, Yvette Cooper decides that they want to deport these people, they will, as you say, have representation from lawyers. Lawyers will be able to say, we have a right to life, and so we want to stay. And even if they get through all of that, which could take a year, the French can say, well, we don't want them.
Well,
and then we're stuck with them.
If they've been here for 3 months, the French don't take them back.
No.
So that's all they have to do. Get a lawyer, and then after 3 months they'll say, oh, I'm sorry. And if the French decide that they are not only a risk to the EU, but if they say that they're a risk to the UK, they don't have to take them back.
It's hard to believe that they can be this useless, isn't it?
You have to laugh, but actually it's so ridiculous and so we are at an existential crisis in this country, and we have a bunch of nincompoops trying to sort it out.
Yeah. How about this from Chris in Buckinghamshire? He says, good morning, Mike. My father was Latvian and came to the UK in 1947 as a displaced person. Every year he was checked up on by the police, and it only stopped when he married my mother. Yeah, well, there was a way of keeping track of people in those days, but now, because of the numbers, there simply isn't really a way of keeping track of them, and that is part of the problem. 6:35. Coming up, we'll tell you about why people who keep photos of shoplifters in their shops might be breaking data protection laws. GB Energy and Jürgen have been out and about in the Highlands, and also we'll talk about this Palestinian protest at the weekend where more than 500 people were arrested, and they've now all been said to be terrorists, so that's going to skew the terrorism arrests, isn't it? Because last year I think we only arrested 258 terrorists. Now there's a bunch of old 60-year-old duffers who want to free Palestine, and they're all now being described as terrorists, which doesn't sound very sensible to me. This is Morning Glory, back after this. Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:37. I'm Mike Graham. Mike, the first message ever that I've sent to talk, says Martin. I love watching your show. My honest opinion now, I'm not anti-immigration at all, is that we should just call a state of national emergency and start saying no one illegally entering is staying. I actually think defying these international laws would be respected by many people across the world and see that the UK has grown a pair again. Well, I think that's right, Martin. Absolutely right. Well, front page of the Daily Express today, Rafe. This will shock people. Entire streets are being lined up to accommodate asylum seekers only, according to Reform Council chiefs. 12 have told this story to the Home Office that contractors are sweeping up properties in our most deprived communities. Ministers have set aside £500 million for a more sustainable accommodation model than hotels.
This makes me so angry. This is what I was warning would happen, because my great fear has been that the Labour Party are going to close down all the migrant hotels and say, right, we've done it, problem solved. Well, actually, no. It's one thing to have migrants on a 4-star golf course on the outskirts of town. It's another to actually kick them out of there and move them right next door to you.
Yes.
Put them in HMOs, put them in buildings of flats opposite primary schools, right next to your whole family. That's going to ramp up tensions even more when actually they're hanging around your suburban street rather than just
and also,
city centres.
Because I said this last week, if you're moving people out of hotels where they're being given everything for free, like, for example, all the food that they get is free, whether they've got access to gyms and all of that, then you presumably have to replicate that lifestyle while they live in a privately run a piece of accommodation. So do you buy them food? Do you give them money to buy food? How does that work?
You just hire them to become delivery drivers, and they'll be delivering to their mates all day long. Problem
delivery,
solved.
sort of cross
it's a nice
delivery.
little circle there.
But seriously, I mean, you must have to give them. You must have to give them that same standard of living, because you can't just give them a house and nothing else, can you?
The fact is, you need to make this country less attractive. That includes not only, cutting down on all those sorts of freebies that they're getting, emptying not just the hotels, all of the private accommodation needs to be emptied of migrants, and they need to be put into temporary refugee camps until they can be deported. People must remember, and they'll get their 3 meals a day in these camps.
Yeah.
Remember this, after the Second World War, there were 250,000 Polish refugees in this country, not just soldiers, women and children as well. My mother's cousins were part of that. They lived for 10, 15 years in these resettlement. They were called Polish resettlement camps.
They were like sort of Nissan huts.
They were
weren't
Nissan huts.
Yeah.
They were 1940s quality Nissan huts. If women and children could live in those conditions in the 40s and 50s very happily, my mum's cousins got married there after living there for 10 years.
Right.
Why are we giving 3-4-star accommodation, brand new luxury council housing to migrants who are young men of fighting age, when even our own soldiers are living in Nissan huts?
But again, it's government policy, failed government policies going all the way back to Tony Blair's days when they decided willy-nilly to say, right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put, because they didn't realise the numbers were going to be so huge in those days, they said, here's what we're going to do. We'll put them into these hotels. And then during COVID, it actually got worse. Because if you remember, there were plenty of times when we weren't allowed to go anywhere and you couldn't fly out of town, you couldn't fly out of the country, you couldn't travel anywhere. The only actual travelling that was going on was the migrants crossing the channel during COVID and being welcomed by Border Force and being given masks and being brought in and put in hotels. They were the only people travelling in the world.
Look, for those people who are already here, build those camps now, put them there. That's going to be a massive deterrent. And build it up somewhere, one of the islands off the, the Shetlands or the Orkneys, some uninhabited islands again. Make it a clear message, a real hostile environment, not the milquetoast thing Theresa May tried to do. That's how you get to grips with all of this.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no question about it. Let's talk about the Chagos Islands, given the other sort of, shall we say, big stories around this morning. Front page of the Daily Telegraph. Keir Starmer hid the £30 billion cost of the Chagos surrender. They're in no doubt, because he was asked, wasn't he? Because Nigel Farage continually said he believed that this deal was going to cost Britain potentially as much as £56 billion. And now the government has admitted, documents released under the Freedom of Information Act, £35 billion is the probable cost, despite the fact that Keir Starmer used to say it was 3.
This is so outrageous. I mean, in my view, this should be resignation grounds for resignation. The Speaker should haul the Prime Minister before the House of Commons to explain why he openly lied and deceived. The Labour government have been using bizarre accountancy practices, which they don't use with any other sorts of funding models when they're trying to explain what's happened, in order to downplay the amount that this has costed. And once again, this Chagos deal is completely inexplicable. It was easy for this to just be quashed. This is the Labour government putting far-left post-colonial ideology ahead of Britain's national interest. Lammy, Harmer, the Attorney General, and Starmer, they are beholden to far-left radical ideology, and now Britain's enemies around the world see the Labour Party as allies. So now you get the Argentinians sabre-rattling over the Falklands. Everyone...
Gibraltar.
Gibraltar. Now you get the Caribbean countries saying, well, we're going to ask for reparations. They see us basically as being sitting ducks for all of their outrageous anti-British
And because we
agenda.
are. Because old Hermer will more than happily entertain anybody who wants to get reparations, because he believes that we owe it. And of course, we've now got our great ally Hamas over in the Middle East, who are very grateful to Keir Starmer for saying he's going to recognise a Palestinian state. There was a big demo actually at the weekend, obviously by Palestine Action, but also there was a huge demo from Jewish people in this country taking a petition, I think, to Downing Street to beg Starmer, Prime Minister Starmer, if he's going to try and recognise Palestine, to get the hostages freed first.
Yeah, well, the messaging is clear, right? You launch an attack on innocent people partying in a country. You rape and murder them, and you wait a while. You stop food going to the people of your own population. Whilst you live high on the hog. And eventually you get what you wanted to get, right? This is rewarding terrorism, rewarding the most vile and debased actions with their ultimate goal of state recognition.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's a shocking state of affairs. Let's talk about the Palestine protests as well, because the police are on the front page of the Times, I think, this morning, saying that it was an unrealistic task that they had to be put through, because they arrested more than 500 people, 532 people, including 15 people who are over 80, 112 people who are over 70, most of them were in their 50s and 60s, and the overall number of arrests more than doubled the total for all terrorism-related activity last year, recorded by the Home Office, which was 248. they've sort of got themselves into a right old mess, haven't they, by making Palestine Action a terrorist organisation? You know, and I can understand why they did, because at one point, you know, there have been things that Palestine Action have done which are criminal and also could be described as terroristic, you know, attacking army bases and military installations and all that, ruining planes, whatever. But, you know, this is clearly going to end in tears, isn't it? They basically were arresting these people. There were so many of them, they had to just let them go again.
Well, that was the idea. That was the purpose. There's this organisation arranging this, something with juries about it, and they are trying to basically swamp the police in order to basically highlight this very fact.
Right.
What's so curious is, you know, I've seen all of the Palestinian marches over the last few years. Good mix of ethnic minorities and far-left radicals.
Yes.
But all the ethnic minorities disappeared when it came to this. This was simply the old vicars, the hippies, and everybody else who came out to be arrested on this front. And yes, I don't think they should be considered terrorists per se, but I do think they should be arrested and charged actually for supporting Palestine Action, because that does come with consequences. They can't travel to America, for example, just for being arrested. They can't be in education. It does have to come with a cost. Now look, people are trying to phrase this in terms of free speech. Palestine Action, under the Terrorist Act, if you damage property, that also qualifies as being a terrorist activity. It doesn't just mean bombing, for example.
Right.
And let's be clear, Palestine Action was training people in how to create sleeper cells around the country, had a map of potential targets to attack. They didn't just attack RAF Brize Norton, they had other attacks on other bases and other places for years
and
as well.
And they've used violence as well.
And they've used violence against security guards and others, terrible violence used against them. So let's not get taken away by the images of old Anglican vicars and others and white.
No, I get that. I just fear that the government is making a rod for its own back, because what they're going to have to do every time this happens is arrest hundreds and hundreds of people, and you know it's not going to stop them. So they have to come up with something better.
It's a double standard as well, because they haven't been doing this about Hezbollah. They've allowed other things to happen completely under their noses and haven't acted. It's only when you get sort of the bleeding heart liberals here that they take action.
Well, I mean, you might say, for example, from the police's point of view, they're claiming this morning that it was a ridiculously difficult thing to actually police. But I'm imagining that they're probably more likely to arrest a bunch of 17, 80-year-olds than they are a bunch of young, you know, pro-Palestine Muslim types who might want to have a bit of a punch-up.
There's a big march happening soon to commemorate some Hezbollah leader who's died, and there are supposed to be lots of people coming out to basically chant support for him and for Hezbollah. The big test will be to see whether they get the same action meted out to them. Otherwise, it's just more evidence of yet another type of two-tier policing.
Although I was talking to a friend of mine the other week who used to be in the police, and he said actually we used to love the public order marches because we just get stuck right into them, you know, and actually the individual police just have a great day because they can punch as many people as they like and generally speaking get away with it.
Well, you know, I remember in the 1980s, those poor miners who were at the wrong end of the batons and the tear gas and the horses. If we had that sort of policing today, there'd be no Just Oil. There would be no extinction. The poppies and Tarquins would no longer be.
No, quite. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Jurgens of this world, because Jurgen Meyer, of course, on GB Energy, one of our favourite figures here, he's been to Scotland. You know, they are supposed to be based in Scotland, but he doesn't go there very often. And I think I'm safe to say that this is the first, perhaps an only time, I'll be quoting to you from the John O'Groats Journal, which it sounds like a great place to work. Apparently, Great British Energy were up in the Highlands at the weekend, and Jurgen Meyer was signing a deal with the Highlands and Islands Enterprise, an Aberdeen-based GB Energy, signed in Inverness on Thursday. According to a spokesman for the islands, the deal will involve working together to identify areas of shared priorities and maximise economic and community benefits across the region. This is when you know you have an organisation which is completely worthless. They issue these ridiculous statements that they've signed a contract to do literally nothing.
Well, I was amazed to find that Jurgen Meyer is following me on Twitter, despite the fact that I never comment on energy, and none of my content, I'm sure, is he sympathetic to.
Do you think he's doing it by mistake?
If you have a message you'd like me to pass on to him, I'd be very happy to.
Please, ask him to come on the show. We'd love to have him on the show, because so far we've only ever seen him speaking once, and this was it.
Great British Energy stems from one very simple idea, that British people should have a right to own and benefit from our own natural energy resources. This is why Great British Energy is 100% owned by the British people, for the British people. Our goal is to help communities and bill payers reap the benefits of clean, secure, homegrown energy. Our journey to energy security, clean power, and net zero is truly on path, and we at Great British Energy are here to accelerate that exciting journey.
So now they've done a deal in the Highlands with a group of people to see what shared, missions they can have. I mean, does he actually really think that we believe he's got a proper job? That would be my question to him, because he hasn't got a proper job. Apparently he's been in Scotland about 4 times since he was appointed, and most of the time he works from home. He hasn't really got much of an office.
Well, what can you say? I agree with you. I mean, it's just another one of these quangos, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely right. Coming up to 10 minutes to 7, we've got a few other stories to talk to you about, including the weather, which is going to get very good today, and all of this week. And a John Lewis duvet, which is in the mail today. Apparently, you can buy this thing. It's an Icelandic duvet, £12,460. You know, that'll keep you cool at night, I bet. Let's just talk. Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:52. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course, and the Morning Glory podcast available as soon as we finish, around about 10:15 this morning. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo is here, of course. James in Yorkshire says, if the illegal migrants have no passports because they tore them up and threw them in the English Channel, how can they be given UK visas? Given that visas are linked to passports, which are an indication of identity, we have to ask how that works. Now, these are people that have come in on social care visas legally. These people haven't come in illegally. It's just that we don't know where they are now. Because they've obviously the visa runs out, and if they don't go to renew it or they don't go and present themselves somewhere, nobody knows whether they're still here or not. That seems to be the problem. Jeremy Nexter says there was a small protest outside a migrant hotel in Exeter on Saturday. We were outnumbered by a loud "refugees are welcome" crowd. That's the other thing that's being very well kind of put together, I suppose, is these refugee welcome type left-wingers, many of whom are sponsored by trade unions, who go and turn up at all of these migrant hotels wherever they are. Let's get a voice note from Adrian.
They keep talking about a detention centre. Well, where is it? Can we have some videos of it? I mean, they're coming in hundreds, sometimes thousands a day, and they're going to detain all of them. Well, it's easy to show us the pictures, not just 1 or 2 in a van, the whole place. We know where the prisons are. Where is the detention centre? And that will actually act as deterrent.
Well, we've been asking the same question, Adrian, and clearly, as far as Yvette Cooper is concerned, they don't want to give out any information, she says, because it will aid somehow the people smugglers. I'm not quite sure why. Surely, if the people smugglers see that there is a detention centre, that might put people off coming.
Yeah, and there's no way in which telling the numbers would make a bit of difference to what they do. No, they don't want to give us the numbers. That's the honest truth. We await a regular update from Yvette Cooper this morning. We'll keep an eye on her Twitter. Meanwhile, let's talk about another sort of road to Damascus conversion that seems to have gone on in the Labour government. And this time, Bridget Phillipson said it's a national disgrace that so many white working class people, children, are unable to get the grades needed to get into university. She's changed her tune, hasn't she? Yeah, she's the most ideological member in the cabinet after Homer. I mean, she's a person who's riddled with woke ideology. Yes. So who would have thought the policy she's espoused in the past about teaching people that they are the beneficiaries of white privilege, that systemic racism, we're all born into a state of original sin because of the evils of slavery and racism and the British Empire guilt. No surprise, therefore, that white working class children don't feel valued in society and that they are the worst producing. And yet they're always told, of course, that it's ethnic minorities who are the most underachieving. When we know it's not. We had the Tony Sewell report came out, showed just the opposite. There is a huge crisis here amongst the white working class. Yeah. Labour have completely abandoned their demographic. It should stop being called the Party of Work. No more. It should be called the Welfare Party, not the Labour Party.
No, exactly right. I'll tell you where else you can't find any white working class kids, particularly male ones, is inside the BBC. Where they talk about how we've got a very diverse workforce. Well, you haven't actually, because you might have a diverse workforce when it comes to the colour of people's skin. Yeah. But actually, they're all middle class, and they've all been to very good schools, and they've all got university degrees. What they don't have is anybody representing the white working class in there.
huge contrast to the 1960s, for example.
Yeah.
You know, when you did have, thanks to the grammar schools, of course, you had working class and lower middle class children able to get into those institutions and really shake up how they were. Now they've got their feet firmly under the desk.
Well, this is what I think has
they've
gone
pulled
wrong.
up the drawbridge.
This is what I think has gone wrong with mainstream journalism in this country, because everybody now is a sort of middle class, posh boy or girl, and there's nobody really getting into it from a trade perspective, which is what they used to do. They used to leave school at 15, go and do a journalism course, going to cover local courts and work through the indentures and all of that, and so they would be tradesmen and women, and they were very good at it. But now you can't get into journalism that way. You have to get a degree first.
Journalism and the police, right? As soon as you send people to university, they go in well-meaning people, and they come out of these, I call them work madrasas, as completely indoctrinated in this ideology. Yes, journalism was at its best when people learnt it on the job. Teachers were at their best when they had independent teacher training colleges that weren't part of university departments of education. The police were at their best when they weren't actually being dictated to by the College of Policing and taught about critical race theory and all of this nonsense. Go back to basics, let people leave, when they leave school at whatever it is, 16, 17, 18, let them just go straight into those trades and industries.
Yeah, absolutely right. A couple of different stories for you. This one in The Sun. EasyJet pilot strips off in hotel after booze binge. This is quite funny. Page 13. This is your captain streaking. That's what they say. Plane passengers were stunned when they realised a sozzled guest who stripped off at a five-star hotel bar was actually their pilot. Which is not always a good look if you're going to fly a plane the next day. The boozed-up captain was seen stumbling around naked in the resort at 2:30 a.m. after a marathon drinking session.
Well,
it's good to know some habits die hard.
Just imagine you're partying with some chap, the next morning you see him coming onto your plane.
I know. I think there was a case of that, wasn't there? I remember there was a pilot breathalyzed, I think, once, and literally escorted off the plane because he was considered to be too hungover to actually fly. So that's the sort of funny story for the day. The Mail have got a ridiculous one, which is £12,460 for a John Lewis duvet. On page 3. It's called an Icelandic eiderdown cover from its ultimate collection. It promises pure luxury. Single-size version of the duvet is $4,935. The Super King mattress worth $12,499. Egyptian cotton duvet cover. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Who spends that kind of money?
It's absolutely
going to bed?
It's absolutely obscene. I mean, for that price, I want it to be filled with swan feathers from the King's collection, the Golden Fleece from Jason and the Argonauts. That should be in this duvet. I mean, I don't think even a millionaire could, in good conscience, part with that much money for
you could not justify that, could you? And finally, people who don't have that kind of money, young professionals are enduring early bedtimes, bans on partners staying overnight and compulsory pet sitting as they try to beat soaring rents by lodging with landlords. Apparently lodgers, adverts for lodgers have risen by 50% over the past 3 years.
Well, this just reminds me of going back, Fraser Nelson says it's never been a better time to be in Britain.
Yeah.
This is going back.
Is he feeling all right?
This is going back to the era of Rising Damp with Rigsby, right? When you're in your room.
Miss Jones.
Do you have a girl in there? Well, 10 p.m. the lock goes on the front door. No.
It's true. Absolutely remarkable stuff. Listen, Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you.